Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'm going to tell you up front that I do feel a severe bias when it comes to the topic of this video. Both as a father and as a YouTuber that lauded Badland Games for what they were doing, I personally feel that their actions are a moral affront and their recent statements are so enraging that I had to wait a day before I tried to record this. And this will also be one of those times where I will ask my viewers to signal boost this story as much as possible, make sure to get it in front of the eyes of other channels, and make certain that people are aware to at least be wary of Badland Games in the future. Links to any sources used will be down in the description below, and before we get into the meat at hand, let's go through a little backstory. In December of 2017, I published a video with the typically unoriginal title, Axiom Verge Publisher Donating Portion of Game Sales to Developer for Son's Healthcare. Bit of a mouthful. In that video, I outlined the developer Tom and how on the blog posts for his game, Axiom Verge, he discussed his son, Alistair. Alistair suffers from kernicterus, which is what happens when a doctor doesn't treat a newborn baby's jaundice within a timely manner. As a result of this condition, Alistair's mind is fully functional and undamaged, but his motor control is severely impaired, which results in his movements being either extremely stiff, extremely random, or both. At the time the blog post was written, Alistair wasn't even able to hear, and he was scheduled to receive a cochlear implant within a few weeks' time. Needless to say, treatments and remedies are extremely expensive, and so I'm sure it was a bit of a relief that Axiom Verge was doing well. It was also noted after the fact by Tom that Badland Games, the publisher for Axiom Verge, had, as you can surmise from the title of the previous video, opted to donate 75% of their share to a fund dedicated to Alistair's continued healthcare costs. Tom states that Badland Games and him did not want to publicize this as they didn't want to be seen as marketing Alistair's medical condition for profit, something that I think is extremely laudable. Unfortunately, a story that should have been a great one to share has turned into a bit of a nightmare. Rebecca Valentine over at GamesIndustry.biz has already produced an article discussing this situation in a great amount of detail that will probably end up being longer than my video here. So just so we're clear on how these business relationships break down, let me line them up for you. First, we have Tom. Tom is the developer of Axiom Verge. Tom made a deal with the publisher Badland Games. Badland Games then went and made a deal with the distributors known as Limited Run. And just so we're all aware, as I want no confusion on this, Badland Games appear to be the only ones that have done anything wrong. They are, for all intents and purposes, the bad guys here, having wronged both the developer and the distributor. Now, Axiom Verge was slated to be released on every major platform at the time, PC, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, but also the Wii U. The game did get a digital and physical launch on the Switch, but the physical copy for the Wii U never materialized. As per their contract, Limited Run paid Badland Games $78,000 for the 6,000 physical units that they were to distribute in fall 2017, but the units never arrived. Instead of giving a blow-by-blow like the GamesIndustry.biz article does, I'll try to be a bit more respectful of everyone's time, not to imply that the article itself is bad, but I don't want this to be a 25-minute video. Badland Games kept pushing the dates back. Badland Games eventually went radio silent. Limited Run then issued an email outlining options to Badland Games, and then a week later, they issued an ultimatum that if their $78,000 was not repaid, they would begin collection efforts. That threat was met with silence again from Badland Games. Now, Badland Games did finally respond, agreeing to a date and time for a phone conference and agreed to repay the money. Then they went radio silent again for 6 months. Now, 6 months later, Badland Games told Limited Run that they were out of business and publishing rights had been transferred back to Tom, the developer, but also that activity would somehow continue under the new moniker Badland Publishing. Limited Run continued with legal action against Badland Games / Badland Publishing, and they managed to win the lawsuit, by virtue of Badland Games never once even bothering to respond to the lawsuit, which resulted in a default judgment being made against them. Badland Games is still dragging their feet on repaying Limited Run in spite of their releasing multiple products, some within the last few months. Now, on Twitter, Limited Run Games announced they would finally be releasing the physical edition of Axiom Verge for the Wii U on Friday, March 29th, stating that they don't expect to come anywhere close to even being able to break even on the project due to the money stolen from them by Badland Games. But Limited Run stuck to their guns and forged ahead in getting the Axiom Verge physical copies out there in spite of knowing that they wouldn't make any money on it. To me, that screams dedication, and they should absolutely be lauded for their efforts. Dan Edelman, who has partnered with Tom, also went through a lengthy Twitter thread explaining how Badland Games also ripped off both him and Tom over this whole ordeal as well, because Badland Games put Tom into a position of footing the bill on several components himself, and they never paid the 75% share that they had promised to Tom, painting a picture of complete radio silence as well. Now, in that thread, Dan stated, When it came time to pay Tom Happ his share for EU sales and contribute to Alistair's healthcare fund, which Tom had to pay a lawyer to establish, Badland went dark on us. We didn't even really know how much money they owed us, though we have reason to believe it's about $200,000. We've filed a suit against them, but because of the international nature of the suit, it's proving hard to make headway. The only silver lining from any of this is that by taking over the North American retail publishing responsibilities from Badland, I got to learn that side of the business. That's how Badland Games came to exist. It's frustrating to see Badland publishing tweets about new games they're releasing, no doubt funded with the money they owe Limited Run and Tom Happ. Badland has literally stolen money from a disabled toddler. Now, in response to the games industry article, Luis Quintans of Badland Games took to Twitter as well and posted his own statement. Now, in that statement, he claims he has never refused to pay the debts they have with both companies, explaining the issues with the Nintendo Switch release and continuing with their financial difficulties. However, in direct contradiction to Limited Run's assertion they had a scheduled call that Badland Games never responded to, Quintans instead asserts that attempts to negotiate made on his part were rebuffed. And then Quintans issued a direct legal threat stating, "Due to the seriousness of some of the accusations that have been made in relation to this issue, I have been forced to put this matter in the hands of my lawyers who reserve the right to take legal action against anyone who might make public, inaccurate, or false information harmful to the interests of the company in which I now work, Badland Publishing, or my own." And I think that's where I'm going to stop pouring through facts. Badland Publishing are crooks. That is the simple reality of it. It doesn't matter their intent or financial situation. They stole money from Limited Run, refused communication, refused to even respond to the court summons to defend themselves, ended up costing the developers money, and stole money out of the hands of a disabled child. And then this publisher has the unmitigated gall to make direct threats against GamesIndustry.biz and anyone else for that matter daring to relate the information that's out there because it might make them look bad. Well, I'm sorry. I, for one, am the type that when I see a challenge issued in that matter, then you had best believe I and many, many others will speak out against these accusations and against the outright theft of money against one of the few traditional games journalists that seems capable of producing actual journalism. I'll say it again for Luis Quintans' benefit. You, sir, are a liar and a thief. You're a despicable excuse for a human being. You want to sue someone? Bring it on. My email address is on the screen. I'll be waiting. As for everyone else, Axiom Verge is a great game. You should buy it. The developer is a talented man and caring father. The distributors seem to care more about making good on a promise than they do with earning profit. The only ones who stink here, Mr. Quintans, is you. I'll be waiting to hear from your attorney. And as I said, please do share this everywhere you can. More people need to be made aware of what Badland Games or Badland Publishing or whatever the hell they choose to call themselves for the moment are doing. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.